Did you know that women make up 51% of the population and act as primary shoppers for 75% of households in the US? Despite this, sneaker companies are only just starting to recognize women as a unique market inside their sneaker community. And you know what? They want more than just bright colored shoes. So what's taken so long for the culture to catch up to reality? And what have we done as a culture to slow down the process of bringing women into the conversation? The answers to these questions affect all of us, men and women, and are reshaping the future of this industry. This is a conversation we all need to have. On this episode of From the Ground Up, we're going to examine how women have made spaces for themselves in the industry when the blueprint wasn't there, what the future for women in the industry looks like, and how all of us can be a part of it. Before we go any further, I want to point something out. I am a man. That means I cannot speak to the experience of being a woman in the sneaker industry, but we at Highsnobiety have decided to use this existing platform and this existing show with our already mostly male audience to have this conversation. Because if this community is going to open up wider for women, that's something we all need to be engaged with and will all benefit from. What's up, guys? I'm here with Gia, creative consultant and associate fashion director of Barney's New York, Jackie Kim. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So we are talking about female representation in sneakers. In the last year or so, a lot of larger brands, especially Nike and Jordan, have taken initiative to approach women and sneakers in a new way. Seems a little late to me. What do you guys think?
It's natural for that market to kind of capitalize on a cultural movement that's happening. Women have been wearing sneakers for, quite some time now, and I think it's finally getting the recognition that it needs from the bigger brands to really push forward in terms of design and sizing to give female clients the same sneakers that they've always wanted in their own sizes.
For me, I think it's a very American-specific conversation because Adidas and Reebok around the world have already been producing women's sizes. I think Nike is incredibly late to the game, but what's great is that they're making a change. And I think it's interesting it's happening now because women have always been the driving consumer market. Most stores that they go into, at least 60% are women shopping. I think right now why it's so relevant is because now women are buying sneakers, as before they were buying sneakers, but more for sportswear. But now it's a very big trend to wear sneakers with, your elevated luxury brands,
right.
Or not.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that you wear, your size fits into men's sizing.
Yes.
But have either of you ever had the experience that you saw a pair of sneakers that was coming out and you really wanted them, but they weren't available in your size?
Totally.
Can you talk to me sort of what that feels like as a consumer, especially somebody who cares about style?
Shoes.
Yeah.
I forgot what shoe it was. It was probably one of the Jordans, reissue of a Jordan that was coming out. Because I wear a women's 8, I can technically kind of slide into a men's shoe.
Right.
But again, it's because you're not being spoken to as a woman, it's a little bit, oh, this is a boys club, you can't join. And I think that attitude, that mentality was always very hurtful to their business. And I just wanted what was offered to the boys. I didn't want the shrink it and pink it version of whatever was coming out. So, it kind of sucks, but now I think that Nike's making a change and I'm excited to see what's gonna come down the pipeline.
Just even listening to Jackie refer to herself as a woman versus a boys club, I think that's a testament to the fact that our industry needs to change. I think that when men or women are designing sneakers, it should never be a gender specific thing. I mean, maybe that's a naive thing to say, but I think by saying me, woman, versus you, man, I think that it even further divides what can happen in our industry. I don't really believe that these gender pronouns should be specific to sneaker design, in my opinion.
Totally. Until fairly recently, the way brands spoke to women was to do what the industry refers to as shrink it and pink it, describing the process of taking an existing men's shoe and then making it smaller and pink as the offering for women. There are plenty of exceptions, but the vast majority of women's sneakers are pastel versions of men's shoes. Put aside the fact that this only caters to a very limited market, it also shows a shocking lack of creativity, and that is not sustainable. In fact, it hasn't sustained. Before the brands caught on that they should cater to today's most fashion-forward female consumers, creatives like Mini Swoosh took it upon themselves to fix the problem on their own time frame. Our sneakers editor Chris Danforth sat down with Mini Swoosh to talk about how she's carved out a space for herself and created a new aesthetic for an underserved consumer.
What's up guys, this is Chris from Highsnobiety. We're here in London today at Nike's on-air workshops and we're joined by Alex Hackett. You might know her better on Instagram as Mini Swoosh, and she's really part of any discussion that you're having about customizing sneakers and DIY culture. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So first of all, we're sitting in these really amazing chairs that I believe you made.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about those.
These are one of my favorite things that I've ever made. It's 25 pairs of Nike dry fit socks per chair. Completely deconstructed. There's a seam down the middle, so it's only left swooshes and left dry fit socks on the left hand side and right on the right hand side. They were actually originally made for the Melbourne on air kind of workshops over in Australia.
Cool. And for people that are not so familiar with your brand, ALCH, you're making really cool DIY, custom, deconstructed stuff. I see you're wearing a bunch of it right now.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your whole philosophy with that brand.
Yeah, so we kind of focus on the whole concept of deconstruction and reconstruction. So looking at a lot of fabrics, materials, and products that may have originally been thrown out or discarded, and looking at how we can extend the lifespan of them through apparel and accessory design.
So there is an element of sustainability to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of just about looking at different materials and products in kind of a fresh new way and looking at how you can incorporate them into what you wear.
So in a sense, is it kind of a gap in the market that you're seeing and trying to fill that gap with your own products?
Yeah, it's definitely like sort of a gap that's being created. I look a lot at products that haven't sold well or perhaps were kind of left in the street. You know, I love to look at those sorts of products that were just been discarded and really extending the lifespan of those through making them into something that's kind of like a hype item or, you know, something that's relevant in streetwear culture.
For years, streetwear and sneaker culture has kind of been considered like a boys' club, but this is definitely changing in recent years. Do you see a shift in the market in terms of what brands are offering as far as smaller sizes for girls or female targeted marketing campaigns or things of that nature?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen like such a huge change just in the last few years, but I've always said I think it starts with the brands themselves, you know, accessibility to product. So yeah, availability of, you know, models in all sizes, you know, going from like a really small women's size up to a larger men's size. And I think that like inclusiveness is what a lot of girls were kind of like asking for. You know, we just want to be part of the conversation.
So in years to come, what are some other changes in the industry that you'd like to see in regards to female clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really great to have, you know, female-oriented campaigns and all of that sort of imagery and the product associated with that. But I think less of the segregation. Us as females, we want to be included in the same conversation. We don't necessarily need a whole other conversation by ourselves, you know, we just want to be all considered equal.
I totally agree with that sentiment in the way that, yeah, female sneakerhead is kind of a way to classify what someone's doing. But, you know, everyone should be part of the same conversation.
Yeah.
For sure. And also we've seen a lot of really, you know, important changes in terms of like influencers and partnerships with brands. Aleli May comes to mind, yourself also working with Nike. What are some of your favorite partnerships in recent times that you can talk about?
I mean, I love the Aleli Mays. Like, I love them. I love that it wasn't, you know, a really feminine colorway, but it had like really soft touches. You know, it had the satin on that toe box, but then it had the coarseness of the corduroy. For me, it felt like it really represented me and kind of what I stand for really well. I've often said this, like I feel quite empowered when I wear that shoe because, you know, I know it was designed by a woman but it doesn't feel feminine. And I think that's the whole point that a lot of us are trying to get across.
So yeah, other than yourself, who are some people in the space that you'd love to see have their own Nike collaboration?
I mean, for me, I really love it when they collaborate with kind of smaller individuals. You know, they focus on sort of certain areas within a city and picking someone, you know, a smaller artist or someone who's really at the start of their career and give them the opportunity to do something, because then you feel like a really strong connection to that because it may be someone down the road from you and it kind of grows a community around that. I think that's what's really great about London On Air is that they're selecting, you know, people from all different parts of London, you know, people that live and breathe London.
Having these sorts of experiences where you get cut off from what it is that you want, or you you see a culture that you feel has placed you outside of it. Do you think that either for you personally, or have you ever seen that sort of curtails the potential interest in what, a female consumer could do? So many male sneakerheads, that interest is ignited in preteen. If a girl comes to it, a younger girl, and then she learns pretty quick, oh, I'm not allowed to be a part of this. Do you think that could change like the trajectory of their interests and therefore has removed an entire market?
That's a really tough question for me because I grew up always loving sneakers. I grew up in a super small town in Alaska, and like what was really big there was basketball. So like basketball culture's always been a part of my life since I was 5 years old, I would say. It's hard to put myself outside of that and have that conversation because I can't give you an unbiased answer.
Sure.
I've always been in the sneaker culture, and I really have to say thanks to my basketball coach, I think. Like wearing my first Huaraches, wearing my first pair of Hyper Dunks, eventually graduating to a Jordan, and then realizing like I can't actually play in Jordans because they don't really support my ankles. So it's
totally.
That mentality of like always being within the culture, it's hard to step outside of that. But I mean, my advice for like young women who want to be a part of the sneaker game is like, don't let men stop you. This is no longer a men's game. It's an equal platform for both men and women to be a part of it. Trans, women, men, people who don't even identify with gender pronouns. Like sneakers, I think, is an accessible culture at this point. And it's no longer about like being in this club. And I think that's what's awesome about sneaker culture in general.
Yeah.
Growing up, there's a little bit more, at least how it was before, there were more barriers to entry with the sneaker game, of course, as a woman. And like you said, a lot of, your initial interactions with sneakers come from your interactions with sports. And again, that's like a whole macro discussion on raising your children, boy, girl, whether they're like doing ballet or doing basketball. I think it's all kind of a bigger conversation in terms of what we choose to push our kids towards or what our kids end up moving towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're a product of your environment at the end of the day, I think.
You gave some advice for women if they want to get into this. What do you think is the responsibility of the brands at this point? Are they doing enough, and what else do you want to see come from them?
So really interesting, I was in Paris, a week ago for Fashion Week, and Nike actually did this unlaced kind of activation, which I thought was really cool. So basically they're introducing women's sizing in like the high heat collaborations, like the Off-White collaborations, they're gonna finally offer it in the women's sizing. So just that step is such a great progress for them, and I think it will activate the other brands to kind of follow that in that initiative. But also I looked at all the shoes that they designed specifically for women, especially on the Jordan brand side, and I think they're cool. They're like elevated, and they're not, like I said, shrink it and pink it versions of what they were. And I think there's like more of a history and an integrity behind it, where they're looking at like a female foot, or like the way that women's bodies are built, maybe it's a little bit different than men's, and kind of designing around that last instead of just doing something else.
The history of women in sneakers is fascinating in and of itself, but if we're going to grapple with what it means to be more inclusive, we need to shift the way we see women in this industry. We cannot let our own limited perceptions hold us back from creating a better place for everyone. And we can't confront how we've limited the community unless we recognize it first. Megan Ann Wilson has worked in the industry for a decade and a half as a designer and a stylist, working with every brand you can imagine and just as many athletes and entertainers. And she's been collecting sneakers longer than most collectors you know.
I'm hoping that you're starting to get the picture, that there's more to women's sneaker culture than just the old shrink it and pink it model, and the overall lack of dope product being accessible to women, despite what the market is demanding. In 2017, high heel sales fell by 11%, while sneaker sales grew by 37%. The numbers don't lie. But women's product is still not at the same consistent release quality or quantity of most male branded products. One of the main issues is perception. The assumption is always, women wear sneakers for men and male attention. But newsflash, it's not about approval. We wear sneakers because we like sneakers. I've worked in sneakers and sports for over 15 years, and I still get asked, did your brothers get you into shoes? And when I've designed shoes, some of my male followers assumed it was a women's only release purely because of my anatomy. These assumptions are insulting, unfair, and quite frankly, lazy. In publications, there's often only room left for one woman, and she's expected to represent all of womankind that is into footwear. This leads to either a very generic or very narrow point of view, or men telling women what they should like, wear, and how they should consume sneaker content. This same idea is reflected in product, when only one generic woman is targeted, often leading to designs that are pink, delicate, and basic. Women's lines are almost always treated as an afterthought, and when those of us who want what the men get, like a classic re-release or a dope quick strike colorway, we have to pray that it comes in a grade school size, which is a boy's size. Often the quantities are limited, and even brands aren't upfront about the size runs of limited sneaker collaborations. Women are more than just this male-made perception, dreamed up often by white men who have no connection to authentic footwear voices. Giving us our own spaces with programs like Nike and Lace is a step, but why can't we just be included? What harm is there in letting us have access? Inclusive sneaker culture would put more women in a position to succeed in different footwear roles like design and engineering, granting the power to change perception at a brand level. Assuming we are all the same or that our access should be limited would be like limiting basketball sneakers to only NBA players. And I know that some of you who wear LeBrons have zero jump shot. We're seeing the beginning of this concept now with Nike starting to label product unisex, with both women's and men's size on the same label. The fact that this was cause for celebration is very telling. It needs to be reflected in editorial, in product, and on Instagram. In all facets, women don't need your cosign, but we do need more access, a chance to change perceptions, and the opportunity to get a little more heat.
I sat down with one of the most powerful women in sneakers, Andrea Perez, the GM and VP of Jordan Women's, to get her take. Hey guys, I'm here with Andrea Perez, the Vice President and General Manager of Jordan Women's. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you for coming.
So, why now? I feel like women have been involved in the sneaker industry for generations. What was it about this year that you guys felt now was the time to launch a specific Jordan Women's brand?
Primarily because we want to do things right. And we needed to do it as a process. As you know, things take a long time to come to life, especially because we want to make sure that we're getting the right insights from consumers.
Sure.
We talk to women from Shanghai to Chicago, you name it. We want to talk to a lot of women that like sneakers, that connect with the Jordan brand, and that had a lot of things to tell us, and a lot of things we had to consider before we went ahead. The second thing we wanted to do was to have the right kind of team. So we have a very diverse, incredibly talented group of the best in the industry that have a lot of energy about making shoes that really connect with women. And then we have to have the right partners, and all of this takes some time to develop. And finally, it's amazing to run into girls in the street and to be able to tell them, hey, we got something for you now.
Right. How does creating a brand or a sub-brand specifically for women, how is this serving women in a better or different way?
This time is different because we've done two things that I believe that we had not done as much as a brand. The first one is that we started with her. We really went, we listened, we connected, and we realized that there were a number of ways in which we had to serve the female consumer. The second thing is that we made a long-term commitment. We're not on this just for one drop. We're not on this just for one season, for one collection. We're in this for the long run. We want to make sure that we continue to deliver great products for her.
Yeah, and part of that is creating product that is specific to Jordan Women's and separate from everything else that Jordan has done. How do you cater to women in a product way?
For a long time, you were buying sneakers and probably stuffing them with tissue paper.
Or wearing boys' sizes.
Or wearing boy sizes.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we don't want boy sizes. So the very first thing we do is that we cater and we give her the best of the brand in her size. So for example, things that she's going to want. So this are the off-whites, and they're not on a boy size. They're on a size for her. And it's exactly the same materials and construction as the men's product, but made for her.
Right.
Just as simple as acknowledging women are sneakerheads, and I'm gonna put her size, so she doesn't need to learn her men's size and her kid's size, but just her size.
Yeah.
The second thing that we're doing though, is that we're grabbing some shoes and then making it have feminine touches, but that makes them very premium. Because for years, she wanted to have product that she couldn't have. And now it's our chance to do like, hey, flip it. Let's look at some things that make guys a little jealous. The third thing that we're doing is that there's some women that are like, hey, I want something that's special for me. And for them, we're reimagining silhouettes. We're giving them to some amazing designers. We really are like, hey, how do we reimagine something that would appeal in a way to women? And that's where things come up like this. This is the Rebel, AJ1 Rebel. We've taken the best colors of the brand, but put them in this amazing silhouette. And this was a huge risk for us because it's different.
How would you tell male sneakerheads how to engage women in the culture?
I love that question because it's really about inviting them in. Just figure out like, hey, do I have women in my network? How do you make sure that they're coming to the table, that you constantly have them around? Because if you want to tap into their ideas and into the market, you will need more women in. The second thing really is about listening. The best ideas don't always look the same. They don't always come from the same people. And listening is not only about, hey, you being able to like, hey, I'll be quiet and let someone have their voice, but it's also about making sure that their voice is heard. Creating the space in the conversation so that women are heard. Whether the conversation is online, the conversation's on a meeting, the conversation's at a retail store. And then the third thing is also just making sure that you have badass women in your network.
Yeah.
And really having like, hey, do I have a network that includes women? Because in this industry, it's all about relationships. And if they can't have a way in, it's gonna be really hard for them to make it to the top. So as an ally, it's just about like, hey, do I know amazing women? How can I invite them in? If we do all of this, just that amazing brain power that comes from a diverse industry and the great ideas and all that purchasing power that is held by women is going to help the entire industry.
So I have this suspicion that there have always been women who are interested in sneakers at a young age, but then they go into the stores and there's nothing for them, or what's for them has been, pinked and shrinked. Part of what I think the brilliance of Jordan Women's is that you guys are fostering a new generation. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's an accurate way of looking at it?
Well, I think that historically, the Jordan brand has so much power.
Sure.
And that power comes from a place of greatness. When you have a brand that people adopt for the most important moments of their life. This is shoes that people wear in moments that they have to be great. People wear Jordans to interviews. People wear Jordans when they get married. And they associate these shoes to moments of greatness. And it's not because they look great, but because they make people feel more confident, feel more swagger. We want to make women feel the same way that men feel when they wear Jordans.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're in about. That's what the business is about for us. If we do that, everything else will follow.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for coming.
Historically, this industry hasn't made the space we should have made for female consumers. It's opening up, but even as those changes come, it's crucial that we make the community a better space for women. All women. It's easy to fall into the idea that women don't belong, or they're trying to get attention by engaging in the sneaker community, which is largely untrue. And honestly, if it were true, all of us can name guys who are doing exactly the same thing. There is a lot of work left to do to bring women fully into this culture, but it's not their job to do it. Women have proven themselves and prove themselves every day. Now we have to make room for them. That's it for this episode. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Drop down in the comments below and let us know one of your favorite women's colorways. And also, that's it for this season of From the Ground Up. We will be back next month with the premiere of season 2 that we're already hard at work on. We'll see you later this summer.